Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Coaster Mafia. Today's video, the time has come for me to break down my top 10 favorite roller coasters as of the beginning of the 2024 season. Now, for this video, don't forget to absolutely obliterate the like button, hit subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you too can become part of the Mafia. And in the comments below right now, I want to see every one of yours top 10 roller coasters. We got to have a lively discussion going, and let's get right into this. As of this recording, I've ridden 214 roller coasters, many of them being absolutely fantastic rides. However, there are still some notable attractions I am missing. I have not been to Universal Orlando or any of the Texas parks, Missouri parks, or really any of the parks in the western portion of the country. That said, I have been on a lot of the country's noteworthy attractions, so I feel like I have quite a lot to look through when I'm trying to pick out my top 10. Now, there are plenty of roller coasters that I've done that I absolutely love that unfortunately can't make the cut of this list. And I'm sure there's plenty of your favorite roller coasters that also aren't mentioned on this list. There's a lot of roller coasters I got out there of 9s and 8s, out of 10. Great, amazing rides, standouts at their park. However, this list is going to be the cream of the crop, my top 10 rides, and these are actually the only 10 rides I've ever given a 10 out of 10 to. Well, actually, there is one other ride. There's my 11th coaster, which is also a 10 out of 10. Everything else below it is a 9. So I feel like I'd be making a mistake not to mention it in this video as an honorable mention before we get into the top 10. So without further ado, let's head to Ellisburg, PA to talk about our first roller coaster, Phoenix at Knoebels. Knoebels is a park that is very near and dear to my heart. And Phoenix has got to be the park's star attraction and a true masterclass on how to make a wooden roller coaster. Phoenix was originally known as Rocket at Playland Park in Texas, where it opened in 1947. The ride was later moved in 1985 to where it is today at Knoebels. The ride was built by PTC and has fairly modest stats, standing only 78 feet tall and going only 45 miles per hour. However, this ride really isn't about its stats, and its Golden Ticket Awards for the world's best wooden roller coaster aren't there for nothing. This ride is all about the experience. One of the biggest things working in Phoenix's favor is its incredible restraints. The ride uses these buzz bar restraints, which have a set position to them, which means pretty much any person on the coaster has about a foot of room almost between their lap and the actual restraint. This allows for pretty much the most airtime you could possibly get on any roller coaster, and Phoenix delivers. The ride's layout isn't anything particularly crazy. You just have your typical drops, airtime hills, turn around, repeat. It's as pretty much simple out and back as you could possibly get. However, the execution is absolutely flawless. This ride is full of incredible airtime hill after incredible airtime hill, and those perfect restraints allow for so much airtime that by the end of the ride, you're holding your thighs because they might be bruised a little bit. It's an absolutely unique experience that not even a lot of other roller coasters that have similar restraints can truly deliver. Phoenix, to me, is a one-of-a-kind experience for that reason. Despite not having all of the bells and whistles of a lot of modern rides, or even a lot of the rides above it on this list, what Phoenix delivers is a classic coaster experience done to perfection. The ride has a beautiful setting in the woods, and you combine that with an incredible ride experience. It's simple, but it's effective. And again, if you're looking for a classic roller coaster, this is as good as it's going to get, and it's definitely worth a mention on my favorite roller coaster list, and an easy 10 out of 10. With that out of the way, the time has come to break into the official top 10, and coming in at number 10, we're heading just a little bit west through Pennsylvania. In fact, right over to West Mifflin, PA, just outside of Pittsburgh, because we're going to be talking about the Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. Now, I've ridden many hypercoasters across the country, from B&Ms to Intamins, but none of these rides, in my opinion, can truly hold a candle to the amazing experience and unique qualities that Phantom's Revenge brings to the table. The ride initially opened in 1991 as Steel Phantom. The ride was originally built by Aerodynamics and was a unique ride that had hyper heights mixed with inversions that you'd find in your typical Aero Mega Looper. However, this ride was quite controversial with the public and not known as the best ride experience. So in 2001, Kennywood had Morgan Manufacturing redo the ride as a more typical hypercoaster. Currently, while the ride only stands 160 feet tall, the tallest drop on this ride is actually 228 feet, that being the ride's second drop. The ride also reaches a max speed of 85 miles an hour. This ride's stats are impressive, but where this ride really delivers is in the absolutely incredible layout and ride experience. Just like Phoenix, Phantom's Revenge has a special lap bar with a fixed position. This one comes down from the sides and never really seems like it fully touches your thighs, allowing for, again, optimal airtime on the ride's hills. The ride's first drop has a unique bank to it, which allows you to get a little bit of lateral force going down before proceeding into a nice set of straight track, gives you a little sensation of speed, before rising up into the ride's main plunge, which is an incredible 228-foot drop into a ravine. This is a very scenic drop as you get to look out over the ravine, as well as you get an incredible head chopper effect right at the bottom as you cross under the track of fellow Kennywood ride Thunderbolt. From there, the ride is a couple intense turns where you really feel the power and force of going 85 miles an hour. And as you head back into the station, you hit the ride's absolutely incredible finale, an insane sequence of airtime hills that deliver some of the most powerful ejector airtime you will ever find on a roller coaster. And this airtime is made even more incredible, again, by those super nice restraints, which allow you to feel the full force of every hill. And again, even though it's a short ride, every single element here, in my opinion, delivers and creates an experience that's, grand in scale, unique, and full of airtime, making for the perfect hypercoaster. Kennywood is such a unique and charming park, and I could not think of a better headlining attraction than Phantom's Revenge. From the incredible use of terrain to a nice smooth track, even after over 20 years since the ride was redone, as well as the incredible trains with the incredible restraints, the amazing layout with that incredible finale, everything here just comes together to make such a unique and memorable ride experience that stands tall even amongst incredible competition with the hypercoasters I've been on. While Phantom's Revenge might be my favorite traditional hyper, there is another ride down south that is, I guess, technically classified as a hyper, but is truly on a much bigger scale. Ladies and gentlemen, for number 9, we are heading to the border of the Carolinas because it's time for us to talk about Fury 325 at Carowinds. While Carowinds had some notable additions over the years, Fury 325 was really the ride that put the park on the map, and understandably so, as it is an absolute behemoth of a ride. Since its debut in 2015, Fury 325 has held the record for being the world's tallest roller coaster with a traditional chain lift at the title's 325 feet. Fury reaches a top speed of 95 miles an hour and is the longest giga coaster out there with over 6,600 feet of track. Just like Phoenix and Phantom's Revenge, one of Fury's biggest strengths is in its restraints. B&M clamshell restraints are some of the best restraints in the industry. They're both comfortable as well as allow for plenty of range of motion to really take in all the forces that Fury has to offer. And force might be one of the best ways to describe this ride. If it's your first time visiting Carowinds and you're looking to ride Fury for the first time, I would highly suggest waiting just a little bit extra for the front row. Sure, the back row might have more pull over the drop, and yes, this drop is absolutely spectacular. The front row allows for the maximum amount of force as you fly through these elements. That feeling of having the wind hit your face as you go through all sorts of airtime hills, twists, dips, and dives is absolutely immaculate. Fury perfectly balances the idea of power as well as grace. B&M's track work here is absolutely flawless. It's smooth and every transition feels so fluid, but at the same time, the ride just has this relentless sense of power, never really relinquishing its speed until you hit the final brakes. Fury 325 fully encapsulates the best of what the Giga Coaster can offer. You have a little bit of the intensity of a ride like Intimidator 305, but then you also have the grace, the spectacle, and the sense of speed of a ride like Millennium Force. And then you also have a little bit of what you got in the other B&M Gigas. The great floater airtime, phenomenal track profiling, amazing restraints. And you put that all together and you have an incredible ride experience. Fury 325 is a bucket list attraction for any roller coaster enthusiast. Obviously, it has the stats, but you really got to experience it, especially in that front row, to truly see what all the hype is all about. Now, coming up for our number 8 pick, we are going to be heading back up north to New England, as we are going to be talking about the legendary Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. Rocky Mountain Construction is my personal favorite ride manufacturer, and Wicked Cyclone happens to be one of their best rides. Wicked Cyclone is a conversion of Six Flags New England's Cyclone wooden coaster. After its conversion, the ride reopened in 2015, standing 109 feet tall, reaching speeds of 55 miles an hour, and containing over 3,300 feet of track. As with any RMC conversion, Wicked Cyclone is a vastly different and much superior version to the original ride. While RMC isn't known to have the world's best restraints, I will credit them for still being fairly comfortable, while also belting you in real good for the sheer aggression that these rides can bring. Aggression, perhaps, is the best word to describe Wicked Cyclone. This ride is an endless sequence of airtime hills, inversions, banked turns, off-axis hills that absolutely deliver. The ride might not have the largest first drop, but it absolutely packs a punch, especially if you're in the back row. From there, the ride goes into an incredible layout featuring endless airtime moments. But what RMC is so good at is diversifying these airtime moments with off-axis hills, with incredible smooth and whippy inversions, as well as some incredible banking on the turns that just make the entire ride feel thrilling and not one moment feel like a dead spot. The ride also does a fantastic job of interacting with the structure. You have multiple hills where you go over a hill, and then you can't even see exactly where you're going to maneuver next because you're within the structure. Definitely catches you off guard and adds to the thrills of the ride. Overall, I can't help but feel that RMC absolutely maximized the potential of the structure they had to work with. Now, pretty much all of the RMCs that I've ridden are absolutely fantastic rides. But to me, Wicked Cyclone definitely stands out among them. It might be shorter in height, but it's longer in layout, and the ride absolutely delivers from drop to brakes. And I think a lot of that is going to come down to personal preference. I feel like a lot of RMCs are just fantastic rides, and depending on when you ride them or the experiences you have riding them, you might place this one higher or lower in your rankings. But to me, this is an absolutely perfect ride experience, and one of my personal favorite roller coasters I've been on. Now, with that in mind, Wicked Cyclone is not the only RMC I'm going to be talking about today. As for our next roller coaster, we're going to be going back down south to Virginia for our number 7 pick, as we are going to be talking about Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. The state of Virginia is home to just so many classic roller coasters, from Intimidator 305 to Pantheon. There's a lot of good stuff here, but Twisted Timbers stands tall above the rest. This is a personal favorite roller coaster of mine. Heck, it's even the only ride I've ever gotten a Zen ride on. Now, in the coaster community, this is pretty much when you get to ride a roller coaster where you're the only person in the train. I got this on an early July morning. I was one of the first people on the ride. Rode the ride 3 times in a row, and one of them I was the only one there. So I'm definitely very close with Twisted Timbers. Like many RMCs, Twisted Timbers is a conversion of a former wooden coaster, in this case the Hurler, which had been operating at King's Dominion since the 90s and was definitely in need of a bit of an upgrade. From a glance at the stat sheet, Twisted Timbers and Wicked Cyclone are fairly alike. You'll look at it from a length, height, speed, and inversion standpoint. And by being RMCs, both rides are going to be at least fairly similar in the ride experience. However, I find Twisted Timbers to be the slightly superior one. The ride begins with a barrel roll drop, which is a nice change of pace from your traditional drop, and even though you're losing the ejector airtime, I do appreciate what it delivers as a change of forces, as there are plenty of airtime moments on this ride as it is. This ride is known for having its incredible triple camelback element, each one of these camelback hills delivering tons of negative G-forces, absolutely throwing you out of your seat. From there, this ride is littered with all of RMC's trademarks: the off-axis airtime hills, the wave turns, the interactions with the ride structure, as well as some of the smooth and whippy inversions. Just like Wicked Cyclone and all of RMC's best coasters, Twisted Timbers really is the complete package. In terms of why I think it's better than Wicked Cyclone, I just feel like this ride has just a couple more standout elements and just rides just a tiny bit better in terms of being a nice cohesive ride experience. But again, picking your favorite RMCs is always a tricky thing to do. Both these rides are absolutely phenomenal. One aspect of these RMCs that I have yet to mention is their re-rideability. Despite being very aggressive rides, it's so easy to hit the brakes, get off the ride, and turn around and get right back in line. These rides are super re-rideable and leave you with a grin on your face every time you hit the brakes. And Twisted Timbers is no different. Twisted Timbers has all of the hallmarks of the best RMCs, while also adding in just a little bit of its own unique elements to make it one of my personal favorites and my favorite coaster in Virginia. For our number 6 pick, we're going to hang on to the Timbers, take it just a bit west to Mason, Ohio, because ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. Kings Island is a beautiful park, and Mystic Timbers really is their crown jewel. It's an unassuming ride, looking like your typical wooden coaster, but the devil here is in the details, is what makes this ride so special for me. I've ridden Mystic Timbers more than any other roller coaster, and after 20 rides on it, I feel like I could comfortably say it is up there with the best coasters I've ridden. Despite its stats not being overly impressive, the way this ride was designed and the way that it rides is absolutely spectacular. The first thing I gotta mention about Mystic Timbers is its fantastic restraints. GCI's Millennium Flyer trains have some of the best restraints out there. They're comfortable, and they also give plenty of room for airtime. Like many GCIs, Mystic Timbers has a twisted drop that immediately twists you to the left, giving some great lateral forces. From there, the ride just goes into a sea of airtime hills as you fly through the forest. This airtime, especially in the front row, is absolutely incredible, a perfect balance between floater airtime and ejector. The ride's beautiful setting in the woods also adds a lot of enjoyment to what is already a fantastic layout. Even though the ride doesn't go that fast, it feels like you're flying as you soar through the trees and through the forest. GCI truly did a remarkable job designing this layout to truly be a blast from drop to brakes. And you also get the added benefit of having a little bit of a surprise at the brakes when you go through the shed. This is another just cool little touch that I appreciate that enriches the ride a little bit and adds some re-rideability as well. While Mystic Timbers doesn't appear as flashy as some of the other coasters on this list, it is a simple ride done to absolute perfection. All of the little details here are where Mystic Timbers wins. The ride is first off butter smooth, which is impressive for any wooden coaster. The restraints are absolutely perfect for what you're getting. The airtime is fantastic and plentiful. The pacing is on point. There's not a single dead spot on the ride. The setting is absolutely beautiful, as well as adds a little bit of chaos to the ride. You know, you're flying through the woods. The shed adds a little bit of a thematic touch that kind of also leaves a bit of an image in your head as you're walking away. Just another thing to remember the ride by. To me, it's, again, it might not have the big drops, the inversions, the crazy elements you're going to see throughout the rest of this list. But what you do have is just a simple ride concept that you could not do better. Or can you? Thunderhead at Dollywood. This is definitely my most out of left field take in the video, but I absolutely adore Thunderhead, frankly even more than Lightning Rod. This was a massive surprise to me on my 2 visits to Dollywood last year, but while I did find Lightning Rod to be a fantastic ride, it didn't blow me away as much as my favorite RMCs, whereas Thunderhead absolutely knocks it out of the park and is my favorite wooden coaster that I've ever been on. And that's over rides that aren't on this list, like El Toro and Voyage. There's just something about these GCIs that I can't get enough of. Their perfect blend of airtime, lateral forces, as well as their perfect pacing, always just make for both a comfortable and exhilarating ride. And Thunderhead is pretty much the best of GCI. Now, despite being 13 years older than Mystic Timbers, recent retracking has made Thunderhead, again, a buttery smooth ride. This is yet another instance where the ride statistics don't really give you the full picture. You really gotta ride it for yourself. I would say Thunderhead is one you really gotta hit in the front row. Same thing I'd say about Mystic Timbers, even though I think both these rides are amazing wherever you sit. But to me, the front row gives you the best balance of forces, especially because these rides aren't oriented around an incredible first drop anyways, where you're going to usually want to be in the back. After the ride's twisted first drop, Thunderhead has pretty much all the trademarks of a fantastic GCI. The good mix of floater and ejector airtime with fantastic lateral forces on the high-speed turns. This ride also has a really neat station flyby, which is an awesome experience if you're waiting in line for the ride, as well as is a very cool part of being on the ride. Overall, this ride again has fantastic pacing from start to finish. There really isn't a single moment on Thunderhead for you to catch your breath until you hit the brake run. This ride has moments where, especially in the front row, you'll go up a hill, you'll fly out of your seat and then immediately bank while you're still out of your seat, and then go back down, not hitting your seat again till you're at the bottom of the next hill. That's the sheer kind of power this ride can deliver. And it's that perfect mix of the airtime mixed with the lateral force. Again, I really gotta applaud these Millennium Flyer trains, as I've had rides where those restraints they won't fully ratchet down to my thighs. So even if they'll be touching my thighs, they'll still come up as I come up out of my seat, giving very genuine airtime, stuff you wouldn't necessarily get on an RMC, yet this is still more aggressive than I would say a ride like Phoenix at Knoebels due to the high-speed turns and the lateral forces. While I do feel like Mystic Timbers has an overall better setting as well as a better theme, some of the rides that I've had on Thunderhead are the best I've had on any roller coaster. It is a perfectly paced experience from start to finish, and some of the airtime I've gotten on this ride is truly something that I am shocked even exists. Just moments, seconds at a time of being out of your seat. There's really nothing quite like it, and I'm surprised more people don't talk about it. You know, I'm hoping in the coming years more people start to realize just how incredible Thunderhead is, and maybe more people will start picking it over Lightning Rod. Although I personally don't mind, as Thunderhead will usually have a nice short line, which is great, and more laps for me. Overall, a truly incredible coaster at one of the best amusement parks in the country, Dollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, for our next pick, we're going to be heading back up north to one of the most iconic parks in the country.
Because we're going to be talking about what should have been in the #1 spot, but somehow landed in the #4 spot. Maverick at Cedar Point.
Cedar Point is a mecca for roller coaster enthusiasts, and Maverick really is one of the park's top draws. Every time I visit the park, it is always a top priority ride for me, and one of my personal favorites of all time. This is yet another ride where the stats don't really do it justice. Maverick is only 105 feet tall and is much smaller than a lot of its sibling coasters at Cedar Point, but the ride absolutely packs an enormous punch. Maverick begins with a unique launched lift hill that takes you up and then over the ride's 95-degree drop. This drop is an absolute gut punch that flings you out of your seat and is one of my favorite first drops on any coaster despite its small size. From there, the ride goes into a series of airtime hills, intense turns, and the ride's main 2 inversions in the first half. The first half of this ride is absolutely spectacular and shows off the sheer aggression that Maverick brings to the table. Every airtime hill is extreme ejector, and both inversions on the ride are very whippy. Now, this ride features over-the-shoulder restraints that aren't necessarily the most comfortable, probably the least comfortable of any of the rides on this list. However, I can forgive Maverick as the elements and maneuvers you're performing are so intense that the restraints kind of are necessary here. From there, you slam into the brakes as you go into the ride's second part, which begins with a 0 to 70 mile an hour launch in the dark. This is one of the best launches you're ever going to find on a roller coaster. From there, the ride rises out of the darkness and then down into a massive swooping turn over the water. This is perhaps the ride's most cinematic moment and feels liberating to the rider. After this turn, the ride initially had a heartline roll that was eventually removed due to being overly intense. That said, the rest of this ride is still very aggressive. You have a couple neat snaps to the left and to the right before you go into the ride's 2 Stangle dives, which are some of the most unique and intense elements you'll ever find on a roller coaster. They snap you both to the left, to the right, as well as out of your seat. It's truly an intense sensation that leaves you breathless by the time you hit the brakes. Personally, I've always found the front row to be the way to go with Maverick. That feeling of having the wind hit your face as you're flying through all these intense elements is really like no other. Maverick is always going to be one of my favorite rides, especially to lap over and over again every time I visit Cedar Point. But don't just take it from me. Tell them why Maverick is your favorite roller coaster.
Maverick is my favorite roller coaster because it's so fun and fast, and I basically laugh the whole time I'm on it because it's so fun.
Accurate, see? And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we have entered the top 3, and for our #3 pick, we are heading back to Pennsylvania one last time, as it's time for us to talk about Wildcat's Revenge at Hershey Park. Now, I had ridden the original Wildcat a couple times over my visits at Hershey Park, and it definitely was a pretty rough ride. Even though GCI has created some of my favorite roller coasters, this one was definitely their weakest creation I had done. It lacked airtime, as well as the lateral forces were quite painful when the ride's tracking just wasn't good. This was overall a ride that at best was pretty uneventful, and at worst kind of left you with a headache. So when I heard that RMC was coming in to redo this attraction, I was absolutely ecstatic. And in my eyes, Wildcat's Revenge absolutely lived up to the standard of a good RMC, if not exceeded it. Wildcat's Revenge is the newest ride on this list, opening just last year in 2023. To me, this ride feels like the culmination of years of experience from Rocky Mountain Construction, leading to a ride that is one of their best that they've ever built. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that this is the most aggressive Rocky Mountain Construction creation I've been on to this point. Every element here is just an absolute wallop. Even if it's just a simple airtime hill like you'd find in any of their other coasters, something about the way this thing rides is just on another level. And again, this ride has all of those classic RMC elements. You have the fantastic first drop with tons of ejector air, those smooth and whippy inversions, the traditional and off axis airtime hills, the wave turns, but everything here just hits so unbelievably hard. One moment in particular that comes to mind is later in the ride as you rise up into this particular hill. The ride rises up but immediately turns to the left. This is an unbanked turn that provides an insane jolt of lateral force before then going into a double down full of ejector airtime. Now, this jolt can be controversial as it is a really jarring element. However, every time I rode it, I found this to be one of the most memorable parts of the ride. Wildcat's Revenge also does an applaudable job of carrying just so much momentum throughout the ride. There's really no point where any element feels a bit slower than the one before it. And you slam into the brakes with just so much leftover momentum. You can't help but wonder, yeah, maybe the ride could have kept going for a few more elements, but at the same time, just be so satisfied and almost in awe of what you've just experienced. Wildcat's Revenge is a truly spectacular RMC conversion and just shows how much the company has perfected their formula over the years. Hershey Park already had an absolutely phenomenal coaster lineup, and Wildcat's Revenge really is the final piece to give them one of the best coaster collections in the entire world. And then there were two. For our runner-up, my second favorite roller coaster I've ever been on, we're going back down south all the way to Florida. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to discuss Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Unfortunately, on my first visit to Busch Gardens, Tampa, we were unable to ride Iron Gwazi as it was standing but not operating until the following year, rather just staring at us and mocking us as we visited the park. Fortunately, last year I was able to return to the park and finally get a couple laps on this legendary attraction, and I will say it truly makes an argument to being the best roller coaster out there. First off, Iron Gwazi is an absolute behemoth of a ride. Standing 206 feet tall and reaching a top speed of 76 miles an hour, Busch Gardens Tampa really went all out with this conversion. Just like Wildcat's Revenge, this is another instance showing just how good RMC has become at perfecting their formula. Where Iron Gwazi elevates itself even further is in the sheer scale of the experience. The first drop alone is absolutely insane. When you add that extra degree to make the ride beyond vertical, it creates a whole new level to the drop. And from there, the rest of the ride has blistering pacing, again, never slowing until you hit the final brakes. Gwazi only has two inversions, but one of them is an absolute standout. This is another barrel roll down drop, similar to what you have on Twisted Timbers. However, this one comes in the middle of the ride and is known by many as the death roll. This is one of the most incredible inverting experiences you will ever have on a roller coaster. It is smooth, it is whippy, and the way it twists your body and contorts you as you go downward, gaining speed, is just an absolutely unique and incredible sensation. There isn't a single inch of wasted track here on Iron Gwazi. Every element here has been deliberately placed and is perfectly crafted for the best possible ride experience, and the ride truly is seamless from the first drop all the way to the brake run. It's admittedly hard not to be repetitive when talking about these RMCs because a lot of them do the same things right. You know, these well-designed airtime hills, inversions, perfect layouts. I mean, it's just, they're all really good at it. But I will say Iron Gwazi feels like it really takes everything to another level. Again, the ride is absolutely massive. So when you factor in just that extra speed and power that you have here, as well as the spectacle, you really get one of the best ride experiences in the world. I totally see why anybody would say this is their favorite roller coaster. And I think if I can get back to the park and get some more rides on it, I too might begin to see that. However, there is still one more ride that I do think I, enjoy a bit more than Iron Gwazi. And for that ride, we're going to go all the way up north from Florida, back into Ohio, the only park on this list that's going to have two rides making my top 10. Our number one pick, my favorite roller coaster that I've ever been on, is none other than Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. I still remember my first time riding Steel Vengeance like it was yesterday. It's about 4 years ago now. It was right when Cedar Point had just reopened from the pandemic, and my friend and I, who had been stuck at home for months, decided to venture out to Cedar Point right as they were reopening to finally ride Steel Vengeance, as up to that point I'd never really been to any major amusement parks, but was definitely excited to give it a try. And I remember that day was an absolute mess at the park. I mean, with all the new COVID restrictions, this and that, this was an absolute nightmare. And we ended up waiting 3.5 hours in 95-degree heat just to get a lap in on Steel Vengeance. And I would still say that it was absolutely worth it. There are times where I get off Maverick and I say to myself, maybe I like Maverick better. Maybe I really do. And maybe someday I will genuinely put Maverick, this high up. But, what I'll do is I'll go right over to Steel Vengeance again and give it another lap. And I'll come off of it saying that this is the best roller coaster in the world. And it's tough because I haven't experienced Iron Gwazi nearly as many times as Steel Vengeance. But, it's going to truly be hard to shake my opinion, both from a nostalgic perspective and from an analytical one. Steel Vengeance really is Rocky Mountain Construction's magnum opus. This ride features a mile's worth of track, as well as being over 200 feet tall and going 74 miles an hour at its fastest point. This ride truly is a marvel, and its execution is even more marvelous. Airtime really is the word to define Steel Vengeance. In fact, this ride has more airtime than any other roller coaster out there. If you were to ride this, I'd highly suggest getting in the back row. You get the power and ejector air over the first drop and airtime all throughout the rest of this ride. And like RMC's other amazing creations, this ride features a wealth of diversity throughout its experience. You have 4 incredible inversions littered throughout the ride. You also have a lot of elements that interact with the ride's structure. You'll have inversions that are fully within the structure, as creates some amazing hand chopper effects. You also have some air time that dives into the structure. Again, another amazing hand chopper effect. Another thing I'll say is the ride does a perfect job balancing out the elements in the two halves. The ride unfortunately does have a mid-course brake run, but honestly, that's such a small nitpick when the ride is just so fantastic on either side. The elements before the brake run are going to be a lot larger. One of my favorites in particular is this massive airtime hill earlier in the ride, banks out to the left and delivers some fantastic ejector air. You also have some amazing inversions early on in the ride. And then from there, the second half is more focused on smaller bunny hills and staying within the structure for some awesome moments. Again, you have those off-axis airtime hills, you have sideways airtime, and the whole ride culminates in this fantastic sequence of bunny hills that leads you back into the station cheering. It is truly one of the most iconic endings to any roller coaster. While many rides I have ridden since have come close, nothing has been able to top Steel Vengeance. I can truly say, after years of riding coasters, over 200 of them, that Steel Vengeance really is the GOAT. Before I go, I really got to thank you guys for sticking this one out. I know it was a long video, but honestly, it was a lot of fun for me to make. It was really nice being able to express my feelings on my favorite roller coasters and kind of give you guys a picture of what I love in a good ride. You know, coming up this year, I'm going to be visiting some new parks, trying out some new rides, as well as revisiting some of these top 10 rides and other rides to get to reevaluate them and get a better picture. So, you know, this video here should give you guys an idea of what I love in a perfect roller coaster, what I see as a perfect ride. You know, all of these rides are very near and dear to my heart, and my experiences riding them are some of my most nostalgic memories from the last few years. So, thank you guys all for watching. Again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, absolutely obliterate the like button, and turn on the notification bell because more Coaster Mafia is gonna be coming soon. And we do got those t-shirts still available. Hit the link in the description for those. You're not gonna want to miss them. Thank you guys all for watching, and keep it Mafia.